Hello, everybody. My name is John Costello, and I'm the artistic director of the Buffalo Chamber Players. Thank you for joining us once again for our Thursday evening stream. Uh, again, as always, like we did last week, you see there's a little window down there for comments. So as you type comments, uh, they'll come up on the screen. So feel free to say hi to your mom or anything like that that you wish to do. Just keep it clean, please. Keep it clean. And yeah, so we have a special stream for you today. I have on the line with me my good friend and neighbor and composer. Um, what's his name again? Oh, yes, Roland E. Martin. He's laughing in my ear, but I'll bring him on in just a sec and we'll start talking. So let me see. It's one of these. I don't know, by the way, in the chat, let me know if there are any audio issues or anything, and I'll try to fix things. But please have questions. Have questions, because how often do you get to ask a question from a composer during a performance of their piece? Oh, hello, Denise. How are you? Good to see you here. Let me bring Ron on. Hello, Ron. You're live. Wave to yes. There you go. Oh, Ron.
That's
Let me just share my screen so that at least you see what I'm seeing too. There you are. Do you see us there?
I do. Yeah.
So Ron, you're from Buffalo, correct?
Yes. Yes.
And
City of Tonawanda originally,
the city
but
of Tonawanda,
lived in Buffalo for a long time.
city of Tonawanda, but we won't hold that against you. That's
No,
okay.
please.
And yeah, and you live two doors next to me, or do I live two doors next to you? I'm not sure.
I was there first.
Yes, you were there first. That's true. That's true. And yeah, so Ron and I guess we go back some time, and we've had some great concerts together. I think over the years, and today we're trying to focus on some of your collaborations with the late Catherine Parker.
Right.
How did you know Catherine?
I met. I was introduced to her at a show at the Birchfield Penny, the old one, um, and it was an exhibition of paintings of Robert Blair, and we were introduced there. We fell into conversation for quite a while. I think ran into each other at a number of gallery things, and eventually interacted a little more socially after that. Not always in art situations. Um, I think that was the beginning of it.
Okay, how and because we all know many artists, but we don't necessarily collaborate musically with all visual artists. So how did the collaboration ideas come up?
Oddly enough, we were driving out toward Springville, toward Ashford Hollow, to go pick blueberries one July. And she was driving, and she said, I've always wanted to do collaborative work with a musician, and I've never had the opportunity. And so I brought it up, and our first collaboration involved a song cycle for soprano, cello, and piano, Northeast Gardener's Year.
Yes.
And she was so thrilled with the way that things came out with that when we premiered it, and it had a number of performances in the first year or two that it was finished. Um, and I even did a version of it for a women's chorus. And then she wanted to do another collaborative thing, which was even more, I guess, intensely collaborative. Um, and she asked about poetry of Pablo Neruda.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know much of his work, so I bought a volume in English translation on one page and the original Spanish on the other. Um, and she said, you can do what you want with it. You can choose as many as you want or as few. But she wanted a similar combination, like voice and another instrument, piano. Uh, and then eventually, as this cycle took shape, um, I, it needed two singers. So did I just freeze? It looks like
Well,
I froze on the screen.
but I can hear you, so keep talking. There you are. You're back. Oh, are you back? Say something. Say something good. No, Ron, don't do this. Well, Ron will be back with us shortly. Uh,
Okay.
oh no, there. I can hear your laughter. Okay, well, this is great. This is
What's
show.
that?
I can't hear you, but it's okay. You'll come up soon.
Okay.
Um, oh, somebody likes. I think they mean my shirt. Somebody likes my shirt. So while I wait for you to come back, I'll show my shirt fully. It's good old days Nintendo. 1985. Yes, thank you, Jessica. I love this shirt too. My kids gave it to me. My kids know what a deal Nintendo is. So, Ron, are you back? Are you? Can we hear you?
I hope so.
Yeah,
Am I?
I can hear you again. Yes,
Can you hear?
I can hear you
Okay.
again. Let me just do something here quickly. Let me just. Oh no, it's fine. There's a little yellow over or green over there, but that's okay. Um, yeah. So, um, did we? Where were you? Were you talking? Did we get to the?
I was just talking about the way in which we collaborated, and saying that she would call me up when she was in the midst of a painting and show me how it was progressing, and then she would come over when I was maybe halfway through with one of the songs, and she loved the process. Um, she also loved hearing things for the first time, but then also seeing them for the first time. She was reacting in the paintings to the shapes and lines that the notes created in the music, and wanted to do something with that as well. Of course, being a musician herself, um, it was a very natural thing for her.
Yeah, she. Many people don't know she played cello
Yeah,
in her youth, and even though she was a visual painter, she still approached, I think, art with a lyrical or musical sense. So yeah. So what was the A Rose Beside the Water is scored for viola, obviously viola first, and soprano, tenor, and piano. Uh,
right.
was that always instrumentation? Or did it exist in any other form? And then you figured, I got this awesome
Uh,
violist neighbor that should play
Yeah,
this.
right. When I started writing it, in the very first two songs, I think I was really thinking cello. But as things progressed, it wasn't working out very well. Especially with mentioned a couple of times of a violin
Yeah.
in the piece, and I wanted to um, just sort of utilize the tones of the open strings of the violin, which would be possible on the cello, but not as
Yeah.
nice.
Good.
So I switched it over to viola, realizing I had an awesome violist for a neighbor.
Well, excellent. Just we can jump right into the piece now. I think it's in 8 movements. Is that correct, or is it 9? I forget.
Eight movements with an interlude, an interval kind of thing before the last one.
And she
So,
painted 8 movements, and then she painted or 8 works with the ninth one being a general one to represent the whole cycle.
right.
So I put that one up as a slide. Let me just pull it up. Uh, I think yeah, we can still be heard. But yeah, that's the title painting, A Rose Beside the Water, and I've always like even Ellen and I were talking today, what putting the slides together, how you sort of see silos at the end in the background. So I always wondered, is that buffalo? It doesn't have to be, but I like to think that it is Buffalo or the waterfront or something. Who knows? But which is a different movement. Actually, we'll get to that one in a bit.
That painting hangs on my living room wall.
Yes, yes, indeed. So let me just come back to us, and before we go, where is that? Here we go. So the first movement, and we'll go movement by movement, and like talk about it and play them. The first movement, "Drunk with Pines," and I can. What can you tell us about "Drunk with Pines"? And I'll pull up the painting and the text. Hopefully, folks can see the text. Let me know if not. I'll make it bigger somehow. I don't know.
The cycle has a shape of sort of beginning and ending with a duet, and then everything in between There are three pair of songs, tenor soprano, tenor soprano, tenor soprano. But the very first song is sort of an odd duet that in that they don't sing together until the fifth verse. Um, and so again, it's also tenor soprano, tenor soprano. The fifth verse, they do sing together, and they sing pretty much the same thing. It's a verse in canon, and there's a remark there about parallel bodies, and that just sort of reminded me of canonic writing. So the tenor will be one measure ahead of the soprano, with essentially the same tune, and the big sort of motif theme that goes through the entire cycle. I just always refer to it as the rose theme, and you'll hear it right at the beginning, and it's got a lot of intervals of fifths in it. Right, is how it starts off the first time, and it'll go through all of the cycle. In one version or another, sometimes just fragmented, sometimes upside down or backwards or both. But usually it's pretty obvious. Um, and the music that opens this first song then is also the music that closes the last one. So
Great. Well, here goes the first movement. Enjoy. This is from the song cycle Rose Beside the Water, with music by Roland E. Martin and paintings by Catherine Parker. This is the first movement, Drunk with Pines. So that's the first movement, Drunk with Pines, poetry by Pablo Neruda, Chilean poet. Uh, Ron, I must say, I mean, in case folks, some listening may know, back in what 2009, we even
Yeah.
put out a book with a CD, and it has all the pictures in it. Whatever, it was a fun project, and but really, where did you find such a good violist? It's unbelievable.
Uh, just hanging out in the neighborhood.
Yes, paid him in beer probably. Uh,
Yeah.
I probably actually. It's a great piece. So, well, so that we don't drag on. So then it's on to the second movement.
Yeah.
I am grateful, and I'll pull up really quickly so everybody sees the painting and the poem. I mean, I can read it quickly. I am grateful, violins, for this day of four chords, pure as the sound of the sky, the blue voice of the air. What did you do for this one?
So this one was for tenor, and uh, the mention of the violin brought forth the, as I said earlier, the utilizing the pitches of the open strings on a violin like that. So they occur just at in this song, just at the mention of the violin. But otherwise, the mention of four chords, I thought, well, all right, that's kind of an obvious one. So the entire song is based over these four chords that just keep repeating over and over again in the piano. The viola does different things over it, and the voice does its text and such. But the piano does nothing but repeat those four chords. And you can see in Catherine's painting how there are sort of vertical divisions. So the painting is also divided into four
Exactly.
sections,
I
four
had that
chords.
up just so folks. Let me do it again. But yeah, exactly. She has the four sections, and a little trivia for folks listening. It's been asked. The singers, the vocalist in this recording are soprano Kristen Gregory and tenor Jeffrey Porter. I'm playing viola on the recording that we put out, and Ron is the pianist, or the composer at the piano. And what's interesting when the words a violin come on, it's actually the G, D, A, E, which are the open strings of a violin, but the viola doesn't. Yeah, the viola doesn't have an open E, so we have to sort of not fake it, but we have to hit that. Yeah, but it's a cool moment. You really hear it. It stands out, and any string player will pick out. Yeah, they're just sort of just playing the open strings of the violin. So here is I Am Grateful, movement 2.
I am grateful, violins, for this day of four chords. Pure is the sound of the sky.
Thanks. Uh, honestly, I love all the movements, but for some reason that one to me uh, is the most. I love playing that movement, and it's so simple, but it's great. We have a question: which came first, the music or the imagery or the art uh,
Um,
in the collaboration process?
It was literally simultaneous.
Okay.
We started working on things at the same time, independently, but always in discussion about things, so that I felt I was reflecting in the music what she was doing visually, and the other way around. Um, so in this case, nothing. And as I said earlier, that she would come over to the house to listen uh, to what progress I was, making on things, and then she would have me over, and maybe we'd have lunch or something, and then uh, she'd show me, maybe a half done, two-thirds done painting.
That's great.
So we were just in constant contact with all this, and it was really, I guess, really gratifying to do something with that kind of intensity.
Yeah. And she definitely worked. She likes seeing the score. I remember when
Yeah.
we also a little later the chamber players did the Messiaen's quartet for the end of time,
Well,
and she early on asked for the score. She didn't want to just go by the sound of the piece, but she wanted to see, because I mean Messiaen scores are gorgeous. You could hang them up on the wall as well. But yeah, it's funny how she worked. Oh, and I guess she was asking in this movement. Somebody asked in this movement that we just did. I'm grateful. If she did did she do the four sections based on the poem or the open strings that you did? I don't know. It's
I think because of the poem, I think that's the take that each of us had on it was that we wanted to suggest that,
I
both musically and visually.
yeah, I would think it's such a strong. You read the poem and you can see the.
Yeah.
So I would think you would both probably have a similar take. So now the third movement, to rise to the sky. Let me just pull that one up. Uh, just so people know the way it's written there, to rise to the sky you need. That's actually how Neruda wrote the. It,
Yeah.
it wasn't that I had bad formatting. That's intentional. So let's talk about this movement.
This pairs with the one you just heard. I am grateful. So they're in the same key, and this happens with the six internal songs. They'll be in the same key. So these two are in B flat. The middle two are in E. Then the last two are back in B flat. And then the harmonic language in it is maybe not identical, but really, really similar. There's actually sort of a quote in the piano about midway, where it's just bringing back those four chords from the preceding movement. There's also the way it begins with, sorry, this half step on E, suggested to me this kind of yearning sort of flavor that E against a B flat chord gives. So there will be a lot of that through the song. Um, Otherwise, I just tried to handle the poem as best I could. You'll hear another quote. Let's see. There's a couple more quotes of the open strings of the violin. And by the way, I didn't mention this earlier when I was talking about the rose theme itself. These fifths, right? If you put that up a half step, there are the first three strings of the open strings of the violin, followed by right there, right? With that one happening later. But so it gathers a big sense of unity from that language of the fifths as well.
You lost me back when you said E and B flat or something, but it's okay.
Oh yeah.
Well, no, that's great.
Hey folks, he doesn't read
I,
music very well.
I play by ear. Oh, it's Jeffrey Porter in on the comments. Hi, Jeff.
Oh
We
wow,
we have
great.
our tenor in the so
Amazing.
that's great. Good to see you here, and let's hear
Nice.
this movement now.
And I should mention in the painting that all those
Oh,
floral looking things there, those are almond trees in blossom.
oh, okay. I did not know that. So here we go. Let's a third movement to rise to the sky.
To rise to the sky you need two wings, a violin, and so many things, incalculable things, things without names. A license for a large, slow-moving eye, inscription on the nails of the almond tree. The titles of the grass in the morning.
That's great. Thanks, Ron. It's such great music, and you know, I know it sounds beautiful and effortless, but I must say, as a string player, it's a hard piece to play. It's all those fourths and fifths. If any string players are tuned in, it's like the same thing with Copeland. Aaron Copland's music is so hard to play in tune because the fourths and fifths, and you're going across several octaves with them, stacking them, and it's just very hard. I mean, it's hard enough for the viola to play in tune, just even when we're playing open strings. But this is definitely a challenge. So onto the fourth movement, a rose. Let me pull that one up. But yeah, what can you tell us about a rose?
Back to tenor, and now in E major. So all this E in the key of B flat, and of course at the end there the viola played. Sorry. That E F that the song began with, and so E being such a strong presence in that B flat, that's the key center for the next two movements, and the viola begins this all alone with the rose theme, so it'll be very, very obvious right at the beginning. There's a lot of activity in the piano, sort of just a gurgling underneath everything going on. And my favorite thing in this song is when, let's see, in the verse, the air is full of bright vestments, and the tree establishes its dormant magnitude. This sense of being in the forest, and I call it my firefly music. You'll hear it in that part of the verse, kind of going on underneath the vocal stuff.
Well, here's the fourth movement. We'll get to that in a sec, Donna. But let's play the fourth movement. Here goes. What was the name? A rose.
I see a rose beside the water, a little cup of red eyelids, sustained aloft by an ethereal sound. A green-leaved light touches the head springs and transfigures the forest with solitary beings, with transparent leaves. The air's full of bright vestments, and the tree establishes its dormant magnitude.
That's great. And I love that there's all the movements are short. And you present all the ideas, and it's concise. It feels like a beginning, middle, and end, but they're short. I mean, the whole cycle's what, under 20 minutes, probably.
Under 20 minutes, about 18, yeah.
Yeah, and but it's just it's so light. It's in a good way, as in it's not heavy, bogged down music. I mean, I know later the ocean gets a little, uh, but
Yeah.
yeah, we'll get
The
there.
ocean and the sea both are kind of brutal.
Yes. Well, both, yeah, to play definitely. Uh,
Yeah.
Donna asked if 'cause she asked about the book, if copies are still of the CD and book available. I don't think so. I think that was a very limited run. I don't I
Yeah.
don't think I have any books left, and I don't know. That's something we can look into if somebody's interested. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
eventually we should have an anniversary edition and
Right.
re-release it. Uh, oh, here somebody asked another question. Two questions. Let's see. In the composition, uh, wait, I'm curious about the elements of Roland's formal education that led to his ability to compose. Yeah, how did you train? And there's another question about that above that. But what's your story? When did you start composing?
Young, and it was not very good music when I was very young, of course, but you just do it, and um, at some point, there are other composers who are going to look at it, and if you're lucky, performers who will perform it, and maybe make suggestions, and say, well, this works, this doesn't, things like that. Um, I I did go to school, university as a composition major, but when I arrived, they said, "We're really sorry, but the program isn't in place yet. You'll have to be a theory major." And I said, "No way." Um, so I still worked a little bit with Walter Hartley and Donald Bolin, who were on the faculty at Fredonia at the time.
Hmm.
And then some years later, a little bit with Robert Helps, who also introduced me to Aaron Copland. Over one summer, I think it was the summer of '79, did some work with Aaron Copland.
Nice. There you go. Another question. In the composition process, did the words come before some of the musical ideas or simultaneously? So as you were
Oh,
reading the poems, I mean,
yes. A lot of times that will happen when even the very first time reading a poem, an idea comes into my head right away. I think that's probably true of a lot of composers. Um, and I can't tell you now specifically because this was probably 2008 that I wrote it. Um, just which things came into my head reading it, but maybe the main tune in the last one. Um, I knew right away in reading the sea that I wanted something big and splashy, and so the chords in that are almost like you're sitting at the piano and just whacking at the
good.
keys.
We'll get there. Yeah,
Um,
you'll
you know,
hear it. It definitely sounds
yeah,
a little
and,
like that,
you know, yeah.
in a good way.
I wanted it to sound like the waves crashing, and um, whatever. So
That's good. And Paul, I think you asked, we answered that already. The motivation to switch from, like, to put it on viola versus cello. A lot of it had to do, I think you said, with the second movement. Oh, actually, the whole thing. It talks a lot about violin, and
yeah.
and we all know that the violin's a terrible instrument. So
Well,
so
I don't think it blends with voices very
that's
well. I
true.
think cello and viola are much better in combination with voices. The violin has the ability, of course, to really soar above everything, but sometimes in so doing, it
It
obscures a little
obscures
bit.
definitely. I would say the viola in that sense is more versatile with voices. We can hide in the texture or come out as needed much more or
Yeah.
better than a violin could. So there you go. That's the right answer. So we're on to movement. Yes, five. Who knows?
Who
I
knows?
don't know. What do you know about this movement?
Well, it's a little bit waltzy,
I love the painting. By the way, there are
and
paintings up now, and I love those
yeah,
colors.
yeah. Um, it again is if you did a harmonic analysis of the thing, you'd find that it follows pretty much verbatim what the preceding song did in its harmony. But absolutely every single note of this song is the Rose theme. It's derived from the Rose theme. Uh, so it starts on an upbeat three. Let's see if I can get this thing playing. So. This almost barcarolle kind of rhythm that goes on underneath it um, is those fifths again, but everything in the melody is only notes that are in the Rose theme.
Yeah.
So it just sort of follows suit that way. It's a little bit
Sorry.
it's a little bit like a petulant child. Uh,
Yeah.
For the end, I repeated the "I want to know" twice. So that's sung three times because I felt it wasn't strong enough just saying it once. And then the second time, I always ask for it to be really insistent, just as I said, like a petulant child. And then the third one is sort of pouty, you know, I want to know. Um, so it's maybe the lightest one in the
Yeah.
set.
Uh, Jeff, Jeff, you reminded me of this in this. Jeff just asked, "Have you talked about the first two cursed performances of the work?"
Oh
I
God.
had forgotten it. Like you blocked this. Oh, I don't even remember.
Yeah.
I remember we had problems. Like it took a while before. What were the two curses? Like
The premiere was in Slee Concert Hall at UB,
I was
and
sick for that one.
Kristen was very, very
Yep,
sick. Fortunately, Jeff, in learning his own music, learned the whole
that's
thing.
true. I remember he sang both
Yeah,
parts,
and so yeah,
which
so
is great for the duets. Like that's really great when he's.
he just went back and forth in the tenor and soprano middle the six middle songs. I don't remember what happened in the first
I think
one.
we skipped
If
some
you
of
sang
them. I think we might have skipped.
no,
No.
no, not in that performance. We did the whole thing.
Okay.
And then Kristen said she had enough steam to do just the last one, and so the last one was done with her.
Yep.
Um,
And
and then the second performance was a Buffalo Chamber Players performance. So that was at Buffalo
Buffalo Center.
Seminary, and um, I think it was that the afternoon of the performance. Jeff called me up and he said, "This is the phone call you never wanted to receive," and he was barely had even a speaking
Yeah.
voice.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
What?
and of
When was
course
the third, the final
that
real full performance?
the first time that it was performed with everybody healthy was on the stage at the Birchfield Penny Arts Center.
That's right. That's right.
And we also did the first half of the program was a Northeast Gardener's Year, and then a Rose was the second half of the program, and people were pre-ordering the books at that
That's
point.
right.
And then just a couple months later, we had the book
Yeah.
signing there as well.
I
So
do remember how great it was to finally get the full performance. Like
yeah,
we were nervous leading into. So
yeah.
well, so we are now. What movement did we say we were? Who knows? Did we
Who
do?
knows?
So here we go. Let's just. I think we talked about it already, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, enjoy. Who knows?
I cannot speak to you about her today. I only want to find the lost rose. It
And we're back. Yeah, this is a great movement actually, and Jeff Porter mentioned his road. For those not on Facebook, uh, I always thought it was, or maybe you saw it. I always thought it was fitting that the best performance was at the Birchfield. And for those that don't know it or knew Catherine Parker's father was Charles Birchfield, uh, and yeah, so it is kind of interesting that the first two performances didn't work out, and it wasn't until we went to the Birchfield that it worked out. But yeah, so now the sixth movement is, I have notes somewhere here. The ocean. Oh yes, ocean. Yes, that's a big one. That's a fun one. It's quick, but it's fun.
Yeah,
Let me
it's
just.
it's the shortest one.
There's the poem really quickly. Folks want to look at it. And ocean. Obviously, the painting, which is up now. It's first in the distance. You'll recognize. There's another painting coming up. I think it hasn't been. No, we haven't made it yet, right?
No.
We'll get a close up of that a little bit later. And the wave. What's the name of that Japanese artist?
Yeah.
Somebody in the comments, please. The wave, with Mount Fuji on the background. I think Mount Fuji's on the background. Somebody in the chat will tell us. But yeah, it's.
Anyway, he was a great inspiration to her in general. She loved his work.
So she was. It wasn't like she was trying to copy. Like she did this intentionally, obviously, and it's a great tribute.
And look at the energy in that, right? And then, of course, the bird mentioned in the poem is soaring above the waves.
Yeah.
So the poem is short. The song is short. It's just surging away with. In the piano and viola, really not much to do melodically until the viola plays in canon with the voice. But then the last couple of measures, when that's the one.
Hokusai.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jessica. I just Googled it. Hokusai. Thank you.
If you have a storm on the lake or something, and you really get the lake surging, or the river, the ocean, and you look near the shore, the water is all murky and muddied, and so with the pedal held down at the very end, it just all kind of mushes together in a big old mess of a chord at the end.
Well, let's hear it. Thank you.
Body more perfect than a wave, salt washing the sea line, and the shining bird flying without groundholes.
Great. Yeah, that's. I love that movement, and I've actually the viola part. Well, I don't know about the piano, but the viola part is tricky. It's hard, and it is sort of. I grew up on the ocean, on the beach in Puerto Rico, tropical country and or island, and it's that feeling of like in the surf that like as a little kid, sometimes a wave will tumble you and all you see is sort of like water and sand everywhere, and it is a little bit of that feeling when I play that viola part because it just comes at you like that. And Noni Harp Porter says hello, Ron.
Wow.
So hello.
Nice. It's been a long time.
Yeah, you see, that's the beauty of this. You can connect with people. So, movement number 7. Now we see that mountain that was in the distance. It's closer. I love this painting too.
And the rose in the foreground.
Yeah, it's all there. It's all tied in. So this is the sea. And what can you tell us about the sea?
Again, it's relatively short and very potent. It's loud and thunderous all the way through, with a big crashing ending. Um, and what I always say about the viola interlude that happens afterward, the viola takes up the very last bits of the Rose theme played as it was in this song,
Hmm.
and then sort of slowly dissipates that energy. Yeah, not much else to say about it. It's just intended to be as powerful as the sea.
Good. The sea.
One single beam, but there's no blood. One single caress, death or rose. The sea comes and reunites our lives, and alone attacks and divides, and sings in night and day, and man and creature. The essence, fire and cold, movement.
So yeah, that one the viola definitely ends in violin registers up there, but it's great. Actually, that's even though it's very high, it's not a hard thing to do. So while the piece does have its idiomatic challenges, that's not the register is not one of them, and for that I'm grateful. Yeah, thank you. So now we have two movements that sort of go attacca or segue into the other the interlude, which is a solo viola cadenza of sorts, and you can talk about that, and then the serenade. So take it away, Ron.
Yeah. So this interlude will begin with what you just heard at the very end in the viola, and then you get little pizzicato things, the plucked sound, which comes from the second song, I Am Grateful. So it's what happens on the viola entry in that second song. It's exactly the same kind of figures. And uh, sort of going back and forth between these two ideas for a little bit, and then the theme, the main tune from the last song, comes in, and it's kind of the viola accompanies itself, with four note chords going on underneath the melody. I can't imagine how difficult it is, and there's even some left hand pizzicato. So while you're playing fingering notes for the strings, you've got to pluck
Yeah.
on them as well. And yeah, but sorry about
No,
that.
it's fine, and that's
But I
something
love the sound of it.
something to bear in mind as you hear it. I mean, it is a solo viola. There's no
No piano.
post editing tricks, right? Like when you hear me pitzing and playing at the same time, that is, and it's. I remember we talked about this movement a bit just to see what was possible and what wasn't, and some things that I thought weren't gonna be really possible. It's like once you try it, it's like yeah, it actually. I guess I'll have to practice, but yeah, but they work, and it's great writing. I love the movement by itself. I wish it stood by itself because the ending definitely you have to go on to the next movement. You can't just
Yeah.
play it like some composers
So
have, like the Penderecki cadenza. You can play the cadenza by itself, things like
really,
that. But yeah, so and then
and it just basically gets down to two notes, right? Which of course are the first two notes of the Rose theme, but then just sort of repeating those, and that becomes the accompaniment. Is it muted or
no, you're
I
good.
think it, I think it might be muted,
Who's muted?
and then
Oh,
and then
oh, I thought the audio. No, the last movement. The
yeah,
last movement is muted.
the beginning of
The
the last
beginning,
movement, I
yeah.
think mute is on. And then the singers come in over the top of that, no piano. And when the piano makes its entrance, it's very sort of sparkling kind of. It takes that same idea that was in the viola, but sort of spreads it out over a bigger space and in a different key. And a new tune comes in over the top of that. After you hear the words a quivering which opens doors and wings, you'll hear a return of one of the, I don't know if it's a theme, just one of the ideas from the first movement. This came from the first song. And then eventually the melody of this last song comes back, kind of finishes itself off, and with the poem proper at that point. But then we get a return of the Rose theme in the key of B flat, and the four chords coming back with just word repetitions that we heard all the way through the whole cycle. Rose is the last one, but the poem ends talking about night, the sea's name, homeland, rose, right? And those are images that happen all the way through the cycle. So those pieces of the previous songs come back, and then finally that same leads us back into the very opening music, that rather soulful tune that the viola plays right at the very beginning. But this time, instead of ending rather thunderously as the first song did, it's a very quiet ending.
Yeah, I love that entrance at the end of the viola. It's because I think it's muted again at the end, and it's almost smoky, and very. It's just a great texture, I think, to close it.
Oh, thanks.
And
My favorite part of the whole piece.
oh, good. I love it too. One thing. Hopefully, I'm not apologizing, but it's kind of unfortunate we have to stop between movements and talk. In that you might lose some of these connections, but hopefully soon maybe we'll be able to reprogram this and you can hear it from beginning to end, because thematically it's so tight. It's a very, and you do hear. So hopefully you have good musical memory and you remember what you heard 45 minutes ago. So this is going to be interlude and serenade. For the interlude, since there's no image for interlude, I just reused the A Rose Beside the Water painting by Catherine that encompasses the whole work. So here goes.
triangle, a chalk geometry. It is the night of the ocean. The vast solitude, a quivering which opens doors and wings.
A mysterious and intangible population
Trembles and washes over the names of the estuary. Night,
the seas,
the sea's name,
homeland,
homeland, roots, rose.
And that's that. Um, it's a beautiful ending. It's a great piece, and I'm super lucky to have been part of it. Uh, Jeff's in the comments. Jeff, I miss you too. Could you come visit again?
Yeah.
And oh, thanks, Jeff. Uh, yeah, and and I miss Catherine. She was a good friend. Um, and Lucas, my son, shares a birthday with her. So, everyone, lower that. I can't see you anymore. There you go.
I'm trying to read these tiny little comments.
I'll read them to you.
Oh.
Yeah, no, Ron's not seeing the stream. He's just seeing my screen. So let's see some questions. If people have questions, please ask. This is the time for questions. But let me go. Kathleen, hello, Kathleen. She says, "How does a composer learn to write for the many instruments that he doesn't personally play?
Mhm. uh, well, I did play a lot of them in college, not very proficiently, but doing a music education degree, I had to play violin. I didn't have to do cello and bass, but I took a class in that, flute, clarinet, um, trumpet, trombone, I think. So, you figure out a few things that, from rudimentary playing, a little bit from hands-on experience. But I think for me, it was just looking at what composers have done through the centuries and recently, and uh, listening to things and saying, well, that sounds really good. That
Yeah,
works. That could have been rethought a little bit,
yeah,
right? Just stuff like that, I think.
yeah. And I think, at least speaking for the viola or any or I played violin before. Some of the greatest works written for the instruments were often done by people that didn't know or didn't play the instrument. And it's not that they were asking for impossible things, but uh, sometimes I think a composer may be limited. They may not think of what else the instrument could do because they're so rooted in its limitations. And I think, I don't know, not every composer, but I know the story with the Stravinsky violin concerto. Every movement starts with the same chord. That it's a very, well, on paper it's a very wide chord that I think I read that he showed it to the violinist who was going to premiere the work, and the violinist told him that it wasn't playable. And Stravinsky was very sad to hear that. And it was only later that the violinist said, I was trying it and it does work. And later, when he saw the part that every movement started with that chord, he understood why Stravinsky was so sad
Yeah.
originally. So let's see, who else? I think, Peter, you asked where the recording was done. I know it was done on the stage of Slee Hall at University at Buffalo, and our recording engineer Ron was
Chris
Chris
Jacobs,
Jake.
not the one you think,
Yes, no, yes. Before he went into politics,
right?
no,
It's not the same one.
no, gosh, no, no comment there. Um, let's see, what other questions do we have? Uh, just compliments. Yeah, thank you, Ron. If anybody has any questions, ask them quickly. Let's see if I can think of anything. What else are you? What are you up to these days in in quarantine?
What am I up
Yeah, what
to?
are you up to? How does a composer
Oh,
keep
um,
busy?
well, I laid a sidewalk
Oh,
today,
good.
quite literally with concrete stones, and I've been doing a lot of that kind of thing. I planted an orchard,
Nice.
and a lot of other things, blueberries, raspberries, that sort of stuff. I wrote a couple of pieces. I wrote about a 32-minute piece for strings, horn, and piano.
Oh,
Um, and short choral work, uh, and then did two solo voice versions of that solo choral work, one for soprano, cello, and piano, and the other for oboe, baritone, and baritone voice and piano.
mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and I have two other commissions I'm working on over the summer. One is for a church in Oklahoma City. Um, and the other is for a friend. And I'm setting some of the text from Mark Twain's The Diary of Adam and Eve.
Oh, nice. Well, you're keeping busy. You see,
Yeah.
on my end, I've been trying to practice more. So for the past 2 weeks, I've been looking for where I left my viola in my house. I know somewhere in here, but it's really messy here, so I haven't been able. But yeah, someday I'll start practicing more. That's great. And Ron, while you're here, but let me. Well, you don't need to be here for this part, but as always, I want to thank our sponsors, ABC Omega, our corporate sponsor. Thank you, ABC Omega, and the foundation, the Collin Foundation, and the New York State Council of the Arts, providing support for our concerts, both live with people in them and now for these streaming concerts. And as always, I always say I thank viewers like you for tuning in, and some of you even go beyond just tuning in, and we appreciate that. You can always go to buffalochamberplayers.org/support. If you like to support, there are ways I think through there that you can either do a one-time donation, which our fiscal year ends June 30th next week. So we welcome you if you want to help us close the year on a high note. And also, if not, I think you can also do monthly if you just want to go as $5 a month. You can subscribe. I think there's a way of doing that as well. So thank you. Where are we, Ron? Where are you? There you are, Ron. So yes, let's what is it? Say goodnight, Gracie. No. Yeah,
Good night, Grace.
that's it. That's our stream. Ron, thank you very much for
Thank you.
tuning in, and thank you to everybody that tuned in. We'll be back next week with something. I don't know what yet. Again, it's not going to be a huge concert, but it might be something like this with another guest. So follow us on Facebook, follow us on YouTube, click that like or subscribe button, and you can always go to our website, buffalochamberplayers.org, to learn what we're up to. So as always, Ron, I don't know if you've heard this, but we have ending music. We always yeah, let me see. Let me find where I put it. Thank you very much, everybody. Yes, Jeff, we're not doing On Wenlock's Edge.
But we should.
We should. So thanks all, and as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and if you can, enjoy making whoopee.